Hey, good morning, my friends. Good morning, my fellow stewards. So it's Sunday morning, and yesterday I was sitting outside under my tree in the shade reading the parasha, the weekly Torah portion, and it was the one about Balaam, the story of Balaam. And I noticed that there was a word in there that is only used once in the Torah, and it's the word to steward. It's the word from which we get the noun steward. And so I did a study on that word, and I was really surprised to discover just how meaningful it is. And this is like a Hebrew lesson in and of itself, but I'm not going to share this with everybody. I'm just going to share this with you because this is our inner circle of stewards, and we have our own special secrets, and this is one of them. All right, so I'll show you where it's used in the Torah. Ironically, the only time this word is used in the Torah, it's not actually used by a human being, and it's not used by God. It's used by the donkey. Apparently the donkey spoke really nice Hebrew actually, and had a nice vocabulary. And this is an example. So in whatever this is, Numbers chapter 22, I think, verse 30. So it says Vatomer, and said ha-atone. So the atone is the donkey. And okay, so she says ha haskein hiskanti, and that's translated as like, have I ever been accustomed? But it's actually the word to steward. And you might be like, what? Wait, what's the connection there? So I'll show you on eSword here where this word is used throughout the Hebrew Bible. I mentioned it was only used once in the Torah, but it is used several more times in the Tanakh. So let's look at that, and I think we can learn something along the way. All right. So here's eSword, and let me show you the actual text here. Oh, so that's not the right place here. One second. That's one of the places it turns up, and we're going to look at that in just a moment together. But let's see here. Okay, here's where we want to go. Okay, so Numbers chapter 22, verse 30. Okay, well, there's the verse right there. The donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your donkey on which you've ridden all your life to this day? Have I ever been accustomed to do so to you?" And he said, "No." Okay, so the verb there is sechan. And as you saw here, it is spelled samech, kaf, nun, sechan. That's the verb, and it's actually the verb to steward. And I'll show you probably the best example of this is in Isaiah chapter 22, verse 15. It says, "Thus says the Lord God of hosts, come, go to this steward, to Shebna, who is in charge of the royal household." So there was a guy named Shebna who was like the manager of the royal household. He was the steward in charge of it. And that word would be sochein, right? Now, I want to show you, so that's, okay, so this is one picture of a steward in Isaiah. This is probably the best one. Like someone who's in charge of something, someone who is managing something. And the reason this is all very meaningful to me and to us is because we really felt led to use the word steward when talking about the roles that we play and the ministries that we fill under the Holy Language Institute banner. It's a very meaningful picture to me, that each of us has received a call from the Messiah, that he's entrusted something to each one of us, and then we get to steward that. And it's a great question to ask, like, what or who are we actually stewarding? Well, we're stewarding the Holy Language tribe, a bunch of very special people who are, very dear disciples of Yeshua, people that he loved and that he loves and that he suffered on behalf of and gave his life for, and we get to actually steward those people together, and that's very meaningful. We're also stewarding a message about following Yeshua in a Hebrew way, about coming to know him more closely. Through in the Jewish context of the Bible. This is a restoration message. I believe it's very prophetic. Together we're stewarding that, and and then there are lots of other littler things kind of under that broader category that we're stewarding. And so it's a very meaningful picture, and so it's neat to see how it's used here, because like this is something that I couldn't do without you. And it's probably safe to say this is also something that you couldn't do without me. So it's like we're a circle of stewards. We're fellow stewards, and our job is just to receive from the Messiah what he has for us to take care of, and who he has for us to take care of. And we're also stewarding each other. we're watching out for each other, we're praying for each other. If someone drops off the radar or begins slipping through the cracks, we reach out to them, we show them love, we see how they're doing, those kinds of things. So anyways, this is one example of this word. And then, okay, so there's one with the donkey here, have I ever been accustomed? That's another one. We're going to talk about that in a moment. This is a really interesting usage of the word here also. And okay, so let's look at this text together. It's in 1 Kings, the beginning of 1 Kings. And it says, oh sorry, it didn't go to there. Go to there. There we are, all right. Okay, so in this story here, let's just read the first couple of verses. Now King David was old, advanced in age, and they covered him with clothes, but he couldn't keep warm. So his servant said to him, let them seek a young virgin for my lord the king. I don't understand that. Like, he had a bunch of wives. Like, wouldn't one of them have, like, been good enough, to keep him warm? Anyways, whatever. And let her tend the king and become his nurse, and let her lie in your bosom, so that my lord the king may keep warm. So they searched for a beautiful girl throughout all the territory of Israel, and found Abishag the Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The girl was very beautiful, and she became the king's nurse and served him, but the king didn't cohabit with her. Right. So that's the story, basically. And now what's really interesting about this is this word here for nurse is it's sochenet. So it's the feminine form of sochen, like a steward. So she was like a steward, a stewardess, and it's translated here as nurse. So I actually think that's a really neat picture of us, like, being stewards to the Messiah. And it's it's like Abishag, basically her job was just to spoon with the king and to keep him warm. And like in some way, when we answer Messiah's call and we like go on mission with him, it's almost like part of our job is just to be really close to him, and almost like the wife of the Messiah. We're the bride of Yeshua, so to speak. We have that kind of like really close relationship, and it's almost like spooning with the king. So anyways, that's a really kind of a neat picture of stewardship right there. She was stewarding the king's, like, literally his physical health, just by keeping him physically warm. So anyways, that's a really interesting usage of this word. All right, so those are the first three words that I wanted to point out to you. These are three pictures of being a steward. So Shebna, who was like the manager of the royal household, Abishag, who was like the king's nurse, and then also Balaam's donkey. Like, in here the word is translated being accustomed, but the donkey's using the word with the sense of like, have I ever like served you this way? Have I ever been a steward to you by just like plunking down and not actually carrying you where you want to go? So now you can kind of see more of the sense of like what the donkey was trying to say there, and it got lost in translation because so now we understand the original context of the donkey's words. So anyway, so that's very meaningful too. Like, each of us, just like remember Yeshua when, like, the king, when he was going to come into Jerusalem, like, what did he come into Jerusalem on? He came in riding on a donkey. And it's almost like somehow we, his disciples in this world, like, we can carry the Messiah, we can carry the mission of the Messiah. And we can be his stewards, and it's almost like that, as pictured by the job that Balaam's donkey did, carrying Balaam from point A to point B. So we could carry the Messiah's mission in this world from point A to point B. Right. Now there's some other really interesting ways that this word is used. Okay, and a couple of them are like opposites or paradoxes. For instance, the word can be used to be of use or to be useful. See, it says of use or useful. And then it can also mean useless. So that's like they're opposites. This word, so being a steward is all about either being useful or being useless. Like, if you're a steward, you're either one or the other. It reminds me of, the words of the master, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a little bit. Now you get to be in charge of lots. It's like this concept of like, wow, you're a great servant. You were useful. Okay, so that's one. Another really interesting one is, it has the sense of being profitable or advantageous. Now what's interesting is there is one more way this word is used, and it's the opposite. You can see here the Strong's number is like letter A. So let's hit to like letter B, and I'll just show you this other way it's used. It means impoverished. He who is too impoverished for such an offering, he just selects a tree. Instead of a metal idol, he just gets a wooden idol. Right? So anyways, you can see there. So there's this sense of like, to be a steward is to be profitable and at the same time poor, impoverished. And I think that's really true for us as servants of the Messiah. Like, in a way, we're going to be poor in this world so that we can make him rich. we are impoverished, let's say, even with our time. We give of our time to Yeshua's cause. And in that regard, we're a little bit more time impoverished. But we're making Messiah's cause in this world rich. And so you can see there almost the paradox of being profitable to our Rabbi Yeshua, while at the same time incurring something of a loss, when it comes to our own time and energy, ourselves. So that's like a paradox right there. And so those are the two paradoxes. You're either useful or you're useless, and you're profitable, and you're of advantage to the Messiah, while at the same time you are becoming impoverished and incurring something of a loss yourself, which of course will be repaid to you many times over in this world and the world to come. All right, now 2 more words I wanted to show you. What does a steward do? Okay, here's one example. Yield. So like as stewards, it's our job to just say yes to the Messiah. We submit to him in our hearts. We set him apart as master in our own hearts. And then we receive from him his calling and the heavenly vision and what he has for us to take care of. And of course, I'm talking about this specifically with regards to our work at Holy Language under the Holy Language Institute banner, so to speak. But there's so much more to it, of course. We all have loved ones, and we are stewards of their hearts. And we all have, lots of different ways that this works out in our lives. So hopefully this is, useful to you, not just as a Holy Language Institute volunteer, but just as a disciple of the Master in general, and just as a human being. So that's something we do. We yield. And the other thing that we do, this is really beautiful. Psalm 139, it says, "You're intimately acquainted with all my ways." And that word there for intimately acquainted is steward. It's the word to steward. It's like God stewards your ways. God is stewarding your life. And so this is a reciprocal relationship here. Maybe you could think, Yeshua when he washed his disciples' feet. I mean, yes, they were serving the Master. They were following him around and ministering to him and helping him. But then here he is doing the same thing for them. He's taking care of their needs. He's seeing to it that their feet are washed, just practical needs that they had. Their feet had camel poop on them from walking on these like dirty roads all day. So what does he do? Well, let's get a bucket with some water and a towel, and let's clean your feet up. So it works both ways. We are stewards to the Messiah, but in this very, very deep and beautiful way, he's also a steward to you and to us as a community of disciples. And here it has the sense of being intimately acquainted. So as we function as we're like Balaam's donkey to the Messiah, as we are like Abishag, the king's nurse, to the Messiah, as we're like Shebna, the manager of the royal household, to the Messiah, and we yield to him, and we do what we can to be useful to him and profitable to him. Like the beauty of it is that's the relationship that we get to have with him, and it's a very, very close relationship, like spooning with the king. It's becoming really intimately acquainted through that, through going on this mission with him, through receiving a work from him. Through taking care of his people and taking care of the things that he gives us to do, we get to know him so much more closely. We develop an intimate acquaintance, and that's the best part of all, if you ask me. So, anyways, those were some beautiful insights that he was giving me very personally yesterday in my own relationship with him, because I'm a steward of something that he has called me to, and so are you, and so hopefully that's meaningful to you also. And I just wanted to say a special thank you to each of you for saying yes to his call. I'm really blessed that he has drawn you into our circle, and that we can work together to listen to his voice together, to follow the Master as best we can, to serve his message and his movement, and especially to serve the circle of disciples that are learning with us at holylanguage.com. So thanks, and I hope you have a really blessed day.